So, we don't have any video this week of me on camera. I might have broke something. Update on that some other time. Because this week, I am going to try and convince you that DLC is a good thing for Nintendo. Apparently, I want to commit internet suicide or something. Because based on the dislikes Nintendo is getting right now, I am probably going to end up losing 7,000 subscribers right now. So let's just dive right in, shall we? Games are expensive. You heard me right. They really are. $60 for a new AAA game isn't anything to scoff at. Despite the very low margins on games for retailers, reality is that $60 for many of us, myself included, is a fairly large commitment. It could be a tank or two of gas, or maybe some much-needed groceries. Or if you happen to be a parent like me with 3 kids, that budget is for your next pack of diapers and wipes. Yet, that $60 is actually cheaper today than it was when I was a kid. Games cost anywhere from $50 to $80 new when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, until things finally settled on $60, nearly 2 decades ago. That's right. 2 decades ago, I was essentially paying $60 for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Today, that $60 would be roughly $83.63 in terms of inflation value. So, the fact that games still cost $60 today is actually astonishing, when that $60 has lost over 1/3 of its actual monetary value. It's no wonder that games today are ripe with microtransactions and paid DLC, because the alternative is to change the standard of pricing of games to $80. And you tell me, does $80 seem acceptable to you? This topic comes to the forefront of the conversation because Breath of the Wild is getting DLC for the first time in the mainline series history. Or, well, that's what series producer Eiji Aonomu claims. But I guess we'll just forget Triforce Heroes even happened, as it did have a free pack of DLC called the Den of Trials. That being said, what you get for a measly $20, which is the difference in inflation basically of a brand new game, as in $80 is probably what Breath of the Wild should technically cost day one, is some content that people have mixed reactions about. Set aside the 3 chests and a Switch-based shirt option that merely exist for some instant payback for your investment. There are 2 packs of content hitting this year for that $20. The first has a new hard mode, a Cave of Trials, and some new map feature that's probably related to the new content being added. The second is where things get enticing, as an entirely new dungeon is being added, as well as a completely original story. You can purchase this expansion pack on day one. The content You can purchase this expansion pack on day one. The content isn't actually available until several months later. Fans everywhere are losing their collective shit at the thought of paying for things that should be included in the game day one. After all, we've gotten the Cave of Trials in the past, there's been hero modes in the past, and one second. Okay, so I understand. We all want things we feel we are entitled to. Well, we all want to complain about things before we even know what's going on in the first place. Oh man, Breath of the Wild isn't incomplete. Is it? Do you know? Have you played it? I have. I find this notion to be laughable. The Witcher 3's last bit of DLC was a pretty significant addition that even won Game of the Year awards last year as standalone DLC. Breath of the Wild is adding a new dungeon and an original story. I mean, what? Oh, you wanted them to throw in 8 dungeons to make it worthwhile in a game that primarily doesn't even take place inside dungeons. Look. Nintendo isn't getting into DLC because they are some evil corporation looking to suck us dry. Though it should be noted, they are a business, and as a business, they wish to make money. Rather, The DLC exists as a byproduct of consumers rejecting a higher price point for games, decrying the cost of games as too expensive, even as it actually costs more to take my family to see a movie for a couple of hours than it does to buy Breath of the Wild with the DLC. Which, well, that's probably going to provide me and my family hundreds of hours worth of entertainment in comparison to the movie I just took them to. You see, what truly matters here is the value for your money. If what is being offered in the base game of Breath of the Wild doesn't seem worth your $60 investment, don't buy it. Is what is being offered in the DLC expansion pack not enticing to you at $20? Well, then don't buy it. These are perfectly viable options that do exist. Still, it's fair to hold some faith in what Nintendo is doing based upon their recent history. Mario Kart 8's DLC, as an example, didn't make the base game feel incomplete at $60. That base game is literally what Mario Kart has always been. Rather, it felt like optional yet additional content that was worthwhile for the given price point. That isn't saying everything works that way. Fire Emblem Heroes, as an example, is a microtransaction freemium game that wants to suck a little bits of money out of you over time. Of course, that game also exists in a marketplace where that sort of behavior is the norm. It's expected. In fact, what Super Mario Run did, charging just $10 and nothing else, that's not how that market works, and sales are kind of proving that. Eiji Aonuma stated just a few weeks ago that they weren't even 100% sure about DLC. The game had just gone gold. They recently had a wrap party, and it was unclear if Breath of the Wild had anything else in store. Fast forward to today, and now we have a bunch of content planned that, sure, they potentially thought about months ago, but they didn't begin developing with a likely small team until very recently. This isn't like other companies doing day one DLC, where they are locking content on the disc behind a paywall. No. This is Nintendo trying to add post-release value to the game while attempting to make some extra money on their most hyped release in some time. For that, how can I be mad? Because as a consumer, I wish everything was free. Well, if I want free entertainment, I'd just hand my kids some sticks and tell them to have at it in the backyard as I get a bowl of popcorn ready so I can watch that bloodbath, because that's what it's going to be. You should see my kids. They play pretty rough. DLC isn't some wholly negative thing. The alternative is that we don't get extra content, and games just cost more. This step to make DLC a part of Nintendo's core future is a good one, as long as they continue to add value. I can't know what the value is in this Breath of the Wild DLC fiasco just yet, because I actually haven't seen what this DLC is. We've just been told. We don't know how much of a story, how big is the dungeon? What is that new hard mode? Is it just a traditional hero mode, or is it something more? These are things we don't know. DLC is going to be part of Nintendo's future because the alternative, raising game prices, will push them out of the market entirely. We need to understand why DLC exists and why consumers seem to eat it up in the first place. Personally, knowing that once I 100% Breath of the Wild, which Nintendo says is impossible, but I'll try, I will have another huge story download hitting by the end of 2017. And that's really enticing to me. If I had it my way, I'd ask for DLC for Breath of the Wild all throughout 2018 too, for another additional $20. You see, back in my day, all puns intended there, I bought $40 expansion packs for games like Age of Empires with zero regrets, because I wanted more, not because what I had felt like it wasn't worth it or was any less of a game. Until I see otherwise, Nintendo has proven so far that DLC is more like when I was a kid than what other companies have done in chopping up games that they've already created in desperate attempts to raise day one revenue. DLC in that of itself isn't evil. I enjoy it. Nintendo needed to dive headfirst in or suffer further losses. You see, by 2020, games are still going to cost $60 at launch. 20 years after that $60 price point was set. Yet, $60 may be what it costs for me to get a haircut by then. I applaud Nintendo for giving me some content they never needed to. I was already willing to pay $60 just to play on the Great Plateau. You see, folks, DLC isn't so bad. Let's not judge things before we get them. This is Nathaniel Rumpel-Jantz, signing out.